Hey, welcome back to Sophiology Central. I thought today we could talk a little bit about demonic possession, or better yet, spiritual attack. Uh, this is something I think that it happens a lot more than people understand. It's a lot more common than people think. So here's an so recently in the news, you may have seen that Tucker Carlson in an interview revealed that like a year and a half ago, I think he said he was attacked while in his sleep, and that um, he had actual scratch marks under his arms and across his shoulder. I think his left shoulder. I think he said, and he went back to sleep, and and he when he woke up, he said that was a strange dream, and then he saw blood on his sheets, and he saw the actual marks on his flesh, which that doesn't happen very often, but. And he was convinced, and right, that was some kind of a spiritual or demonic attack. Um, Now, I don't, personally, I don't know exactly how to define that. But though it is a spiritual attack, I don't know if it's demonic necessarily, but probably we'll get into it in a second. But there's demons. Put it this way: there are demons, and then there are demons. So, but to before I get into that a little bit more, I'll tell you some about my own experiences, my family. So, and because I think the spiritual attack doesn't necessarily need to be a demon, but it can be, or there's something malevolent certainly involved. So here's going back probably 30 years. My two of my older kids, I can't remember if it was my son Dylan or my son Tommy. Tommy's will be 30 in March, and Dylan is 32. Or he just turned 33. Just turned 32. Um, so we were living in this rented house in Ferndale, Michigan, and the previous owner of the house was an older woman who died in the house. And we put the kids in bed. The kids were 2 or 3 years old, and we put them in bed. And whoever it was, I can't remember if it was Tommy or Dylan, comes out and said, "Could you tell that lady to leave me alone?" And we didn't know who she was talking or he was talking about. We didn't know if it was a dream or what, but I don't know if it was later that day, but later, in the same time framework, my wife had gone to bed early. I was a school teacher at the time, so I would stay up grading papers or planning lessons or whatever. And she starts crying out in her sleep. And so I got up and I go into the bedroom, and she said that this woman, this old woman, was bent over her bed, pushing her down, trying to get to her. And when I came in the room, the spirit or whatever it was disappeared or left. So I don't know what we did at the time, but maybe we probably got a hold of some holy water and asperges the house. Um, but that's like our first kind of immediate experience with something like that. And across the years, I have encountered people I thought were under spiritual attack or just not in good shape. Not that they were necessarily possessed, because I do not have any experience with that. But I have plenty of experience with these other kinds of things. And what do you do in the case of that? Well, there are lots of things you can do. But let me get to another story from our family from just a few years ago, and then just a couple weeks ago, that will maybe throw a little light on this. So I'm guessing this was 4 years ago, maybe 5, early in COVID, that my daughter had gone to some kind of thing where people were doing some kind of shamanism deal. And she was 22 or 23 at the time. I'm like, don't go. It's not gonna be good. And I think what happened is something followed her home. I'm guessing. Could be a lot of things, but that's my guess. Is something followed her home, and like a week or two later, she was in her room. We have an apartment at the top floor of our house. She was in her apartment, and she woke me up at like 1 or 2 in the morning and said, "Dad, there's something attacking me. Can you make it stop?" And I happened to have, um, as we always do, a couple of flasks of holy water in the house, and I think I had some. A priest gave me some chrism, some holy oil from Holy Thursday. Uh, so we prayed. I prayed. I'll read it in a couple minutes. Psalm 68, uh, and I sprinkled holy water in her room and other places in the house. And then it attacked my wife. So I I anointed my wife with the oil, and I left her alone. Then I went to bed, and as I went to bed, I was praying the rosary, which is often what I do in the middle of the night if I wake up and I can't fall asleep. I'll say the rosary, and either I'll fall asleep saying the rosary, or I'll finish the whole thing, and then if I have to think of another reason to fall, or another trick to fall asleep. And as my dad told me when I was a kid, if you fall asleep praying, your guardian angel finishes the prayer. So anyway, I'm praying the rosary, and I'm lying in bed. I'm just about to and I'm just about finished with the. Well, I am finished with the rosary. Just about to doze off, and then I felt this pressure on, like, pushing on my shoulders, pushing me down into the bed, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't break out of it, and I don't remember what I did to break out of it, but I finally broke through, and I had my wife anoint me with the same chrism. Uh, and as it says in the temptation of Jesus, and the demon left for a time. And then, and now I don't know if it was the same one or what happened, but 2 weeks ago, maybe, I I woke up in the middle of the night, and I didn't want to go back into my bed because I didn't want to wake my wife up. So we had a futon in another room, so I just went to lie down in there. It was like 3 or 3:30, and I prayed a little, and then I went to sleep. And then I don't know how long later, but I felt this pressure down on my shoulders, pushing me down. It felt like, and I couldn't speak, but I finally did find the energy to speak, and I said, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus!" Called on the name of Jesus, and it left. And then I don't know if I did holy water or anything. I think I did. I think I blessed myself with holy water and went back to sleep, and it hasn't happened since. But it does happen upon occasion. But here's my question, right? For you, has this happened to you? Has this happened to people you know? Because one time I was mentioning the story about a few years ago. We had some friends over for dinner, and we were conversation. I don't know how it got to that, but I got to that, and I told them what happened. And yes, my friend, who is mid-40s, he said the same thing that happened to him and his wife at their house they had rented. So it's worth thinking about, and I would certainly love to hear what you think about that. So in the comments, let me know if that happened to you, or it happened to people you know, or whatever, right? But what do you do if that happens to you, right? Now, like I said, I don't know if I would call these actual demons, like fallen angel demons. And I get that idea from this book here, Meditations on the Tarot, by Valentin Tomberg. When it was published, we didn't know that, but I bought the book maybe in 1985 when it was published, but if it wasn't then, it was not soon. It was soon thereafter. And Meditations on the Tarot, if you don't know, is really a book of kind of esoteric Catholic, not theology, philosophy, probably a better way to describe it, but one of the more unique books ever published, I think, in the Catholic world. And Valentin Tomberg had been an anthroposophist who left anthroposophy and eventually became Roman Catholic. But he wrote this extraordinary book, and in his chapter or letter, all the chapters are written in the form of letters or epistolary. He writes on the letter on the tarot card, the Devil, card 15, about demons and about what we have to deal with. And he talks about actual demons, meaning like fallen angels, who are not easy to get rid of. But he also talks about artificial demons. And artificial demon, a word that's really been kicked around a lot lately, and which is kind of surprising because until I wrote, I can't remember which book, it was a word I got from Valentin Tomberg. You didn't see it appear too much in any philosophical or theological discourse, but now you see the word egregore quite a bit, like a generated demon or a generated spirit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be completely evil, but it's never good. I mean, you don't generate good ones. And they could be kind of, I've always described an egregore as, you know, the spirit of groupthink. Even a small group, like when I was in the English department at Marygrove College way back in the day, you definitely had, you could feel it, right? You go into those situations, you could know what you're supposed to say, what you can't say. And that's because that's the group spirit, or the egregore is trying to influence the way you think. And it's, you know, I'm like a naturally resistant to egregore thinking. But here's what Tomberg says about artificial demons. Artificial demons brought to the light of day and resisted are dissipated. They disappear. With respect to natural demons, that is, entities of the hierarchies of the left, fallen angels, this is not so. Good point, right? They are dissipated. And I think, actually, to tell you the truth, I think it's there's a corollary to, if you know about cloudbusters, with using a cloudbuster, that what happens when you use a cloudbuster, the chemtrails, or whatever you want to call them, are dissipated, right? They disappear. That's what happens. So in a way, you can say chemtrails are a kind of artificial demon in a way. But still, I mean, if they're artificial or not, they can do harm to people, or at least they can lead to harm. I mean, because you become afraid, or for one thing. And here's what he says a little bit later, right? He says, let us now proceed to the second part of our question. How does one protect oneself and rid oneself of demons? It follows from the foregoing that clarity of thought and rightness of moral attitude are both necessary, and also sufficient, in order to supply the light which renders demons impotent. Nevertheless, one needs rest, time during which one is left in peace by demons, that is, time during which they are absent. In order to assure this, he continues, one has to resort to sacred magic. And if you know Meditations on the Tarot or Valentin Tomberg, sacred magic is an important concept, right? Tradition, continuing, centuries of experience, teaches us what is necessary in order to protect oneself from the approach of demons, or, if one senses them approaching, what to do in order to drive them away, and gives the following practical advice. Number, make the sign of the cross towards the north, south, east, and west, each time saying the first two verses of Psalm 68. And that's what I told you earlier. And sometimes in some numbering system, the alternate, or which one's which, is 67. But here's what it is. Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered. Let those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so drive them away. As wax melts before fire, let the wicked perish before God. Right? That's a powerful exorcism prayer. And in fact, in the Eastern Christian tradition, Orthodox and Eastern Byzantine Catholic, on Easter, when they're opening the holy doors, they perform this exorcism right then. So drive them away. It's part of the ritual, which it's beautiful, beautiful part of the ritual. and it's like I said, and it's powerful. And here is further advice, he says, as simple and effective as the preceding. If one senses depression or any other sign of approach of a demon or demons, one spits 3 times to the left and crosses oneself. Which I have used that one upon occasion. I think it works. It works. Like he says, it works. And I'm going to finish up with what he says. These 2 procedures have been tried across the centuries, and I repeat, are very effective. They are so above all with regard to artificial demons. With respect to entities of the hierarchies of the left, it is not so simple to protect oneself against them. For the formula, let God arise, let his enemies be scattered, does not apply, truth to tell, to entities of the hierarchies of the left, because they are not enemies of God, and they are not to be dissipated. In law, one cannot win a cause simply by driving the attorney away. One must convince him of the innocence of the accused. Only then will he become silent to leave the latter in peace. And I heard a great story. I'm not at all a John Calvin person, but apparently with John Calvin, my friend Matthew Miller told me this story. Calvin, when encountering some kind of demonic force like this, one of the things that demons do is they'll tell your secrets. They'll air your dirty laundry to you. Like only you're supposed to know about this, but they know about it. And Calvin said, "I plead the blood of Christ." So boom, you don't need, that's your advocate, right? That's your lawyer, right? When I said the advocate, right? That's your lawyer. You don't need to prove yourself innocent. You need to plead the blood of Christ. But you also have to go and sin no more, as Jesus says, or at least do your best, right? Because otherwise, as Jesus says, they'll come back. You're going to come back to bring all their friends next time. Clean the house, sweep the house clean, and we're going to. Thanks a lot, appreciate it. Now we're going to have a party. So these are some things you can do. And another thing which Tomberg mentioned, I think earlier in the book, is kind of the secret weapon is the Rosary of the Virgin Mary in particular. I mean, blood of Christ is a secret weapon, but they really hate the Virgin Mary or Sophia. Hate her. Which is because if you know your Bible, in the book of Revelation, she's the instrument of defeat, right? She and the Archangel Michael, which it's interesting, and I think I mentioned this before when I did the video on Celtic Christianity. In Celtic Christianity, those are the 2 saints mentioned more than anybody else. Besides the Trinity, is the Virgin Mary and Saint Michael the Archangel, or as Tomberg calls him, the archistrategist. So, as I said, what are your experiences? Do you know, has this happened to you? Have you had to encounter this? And the other question I have, right? Do you think this is happening more these days? I am of the opinion that it is. And I think this is because I think the culture has gone demonic. And you often see, one of the indicators of a demonic possession is a horror before holy things, right? So whether, you've all seen the image of sprinkling a possessed person with holy water and it burns them, right? Or showing them the cross and they won't, and it terrifies them. Or the prayers, which also terrify them, or being in a church. All these things terrify them. And the other thing they do is they mock them, right? They mock holy things. And I think probably the weirdest, the most disturbing thing is the spirit of demonic parody, where in the pro-choice movement, for instance, where there's a demonic parody of the Eucharist, with "This is my body," right? But you also see in the disfigurement. We talked about this in the video on beauty and fecundity and fertility. You see this in the disfigurement of the human image, which is we're made in the image and likeness of God, and with the disfigurement of the human image, male and female created he them, right? Where the disfigurement of male and female, the disfigurement of the human image and of what beauty is. And usually you see, with with people who I really think they're at least partially demonically possessed when they take on those personas, and they're trying to look like demons very often. Or even if they're not trying to, they do. I mean, it's like looking. I mean, half of the things you see is like my grandpa. I'm in here, but you have to wait a minute. Let's see, choose life, right? Um, but what you see with people who appropriate that kind of way of looking, it's a demonic parody of the human image, and it's likewise it's the horror of holy things, right? It really is the horror of holy things. And so I think, and I don't know what kind of timeline to put this on, other than that I've really noticed it over the last 5 years, in the age of this our COVID, right? I've really noticed this then. I mean, it was certainly present before, but it seemed to gone into hyperdrive over the last 5 years. So, as I said, in the comments, let me know what you think. Because I think, as Doc is outlines of demonolatry say, doesn't matter. The devil doesn't care if you're Christian or atheist. you know, you know, I'm just looking for souls, right? And so, I mean, and I think if this really is, again, uh, it's become more prevalent. But I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be. So let me know what you think, and hopefully we'll continue this conversation in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, and if you like what I had to say, hit the like button. But like I always say, most importantly, leave some comments, because I want this to be a conversation. All right. So, be on guard. Be on guard. Put on the armor of light.